Okay, so let's dive in. The big question today. Why did JD.com, this huge e-commerce player, suddenly decide to jump headfirst into the already brutal food delivery market back in 2023?
Yeah, and go right up against Meituan, the dominant force. It's a big move.
Definitely. This whole food delivery war in China, it's been a massive talking point online, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And you see a lot of analysis focusing on, the business models, the public reaction.
Right, the usual angles.
Yeah.
But we want to try something a bit different today.
We're looking at it through this lens of anti-entropy growth historical view.
Exactly. Which sounds complex, but basically, we're trying to figure out the underlying reasons, like what problems or disruptions these entropy increases with JD.com actually trying to fight back against.
Precisely. And to really get why JD.com did this now, we kind of need to understand the backstory first.
Makes sense. Context is key.
So let's do a quick run through of how these food delivery wars in China even started. It's quite a history.
Okay, lay it on us. Where did it all begin?
Well, the early days, think 2011 to 2013. A really key figure was Zhang Zuhao. He founded Ili.me back in 2011.
Nearly.me. Right, one of the originals.
Yeah, and getting funding initially, super tough. Apparently, they even used temple incense money at one point.
No way.
Really, that's the story. But then they got their first $1 million investment, things started rolling, and after a $6 million funding round in 2013, they expanded nationally, became the early leader, sort of low entropy back then, just trying to get going.
Okay, so Ili.me is carving out its space. What about Meituan? Weren't they around then, too?
They were, but they were deep in something else, the 1,000-group buying wars. You remember that whole frenzy?
Oh, yeah, that was intense.
Meituan basically survived that thanks to a big $50 million investment from Alibaba and Sequoia Capital. But by 2013, their group buying growth was kind of stalling.
So they needed something new.
Exactly. They pivoted to food delivery. They even tried to buy Ili.me, but that didn't work out. So that pivot was their own move against, entropy setting in on their main business.
Got it. So the stage was set for a clash.
Oh, absolutely. The competition really exploded between 2014 and 2015.
It's a subsidy wars.
That's right, a massive subsidy arms race. Meituan and Ili.me were burning through over €1 billion a month on subsidies. Just crazy amounts of money.
Wow. $1 billion a month.
And others jumped in too. Alibaba had Taoyuan Dian, Baidu launched Baidu Weimai, and Tencent backed Ili.me through Dianping.
So it became like these big alliances.
Pretty much. You had the Tencent department, Ili.me, plus Dianping versus the Alibaba department backing Meituan. This whole subsidy war, huge entropy, right? Burning cash, fighting for every user.
And it wasn't just about the money, though. I seem to remember things getting pretty rough on the ground level, too.
Oh, definitely. Meituan launched something called the Octopus Action, super aggressive ground promotion. They hired tons of college students.
Okay.
And they even poached district managers directly from Ili.me. It got so heated, apparently, that the promotion teams from both sides actually got into physical fights in the streets.
Really? Actual fights.
Yeah. Shows you the pressure, the disorder, the entropy in the market back then.
Intense. And then came that big merger, which sort of changed the game again.
Exactly. 2015, Meituan and Dianping merged, and Wang Zheng, Meituan's founder, was apparently very strategic about it.
How so?
Well, the story goes he talked with Baidu first, kind of as a smokescreen. Then he teamed up with Sequoia Capital to persuade Tencent to back the merger.
It's clever.
And they set up the share structure as management holding, partly to shield against interference from Alibaba, who was an early Meituan investor, a major anti-entropy move, consolidating power.
Okay, so that merger solidified things a bit. What happened in the years after that, leading up towards 2023 and JD's entry?
Right, so between 2016 and 2023, more big shifts. Alibaba actually acquired Ili.me outright in 2016, paid a fortune, $9.5 billion.
Wow, so Alibaba fully committed.
They did, but Ili.me struggled after that. They apparently lacked management with real local life service experience, had poor strategic coordination internally. Basically, they started falling behind Meituan. Internal entropy, you could say, hindering them despite the resources.
Interesting. And what about Baidu Weimai? They were in the mix, too.
They were. Baidu Weimai had some success, especially in the white-collar market. They built their own logistics, but they made some key mistakes.
Like what?
Well, one example. During the 2016 Spring Festival, they apparently gave their riders a really long holiday. Meituan seized the opportunity and poached a lot of their delivery staff.
Ouch.
That hurts.
Yeah. And Baidu Weimai also tried diversifying into things like fresh food e-commerce, which maybe spread them too thin. Eventually, Baidu just exited that whole local life sector. Those missteps that increased their operational entropy lost them ground.
While all this was happening, Meituan just kept getting stronger. Pretty much, yeah. They were really strategic about integrating the whole catering industry chain. They invested in ordering systems like Damazui, took a stake in the big tea chain Mixu Bingcheng, built their Kuail purchase platform for suppliers.
So building a whole ecosystem.
Exactly. Food delivery, supply chain, marketing a closed loop. That really cemented their dominance and, reduced external uncertainty for them, controlled more of the process.
Okay, that brings us right up to the present, or near present. 2023, JD.com decides to jump in.
Yep. They came in with this strategy, no commission for merchants, and crucially, paying Social Security for riders. Big promises.
Targeting that super fast delivery market.
Right, the 30-minute delivery, instant retail space. They threw a lot of money at subsidies initially, apparently hit 10 million daily orders in April 2023, which is huge.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing.
No. They faced challenges with transportation capacity, getting enough variety of products, changing how consumers think about JD for this stuff, and just the sustainability of that high subsidy model. But you can see their entry as trying to shake things up, disrupt the existing competitive situation.
So where does that leave things right now? What's the current state of play?
It's really what analysts call stock competition. Everyone's fighting for existing market share. Meituan is still dominant because they have that long-tail demand cover, the massive delivery network, the merchant relationships.
They're deeply entrenched.
Very. So JD.com seems to be looking for a niche, maybe focusing on big chain restaurants, using food delivery to pull users into their main e-commerce platform, differentiation.
Alibaba's still in the game too?
Yeah, Alibaba's upgraded their Taobao flash sale service, and it's working more closely with Alibaba now. So the market is actually getting a bit more diversified again, maybe more competitive.
Okay, that's a fantastic overview of the history. Really sets the scene.
Yeah.
Now let's get back to our main angle, the anti-entropy view.
Yeah.
What were those big disruptions, those entropy increases that you think really pushed JD.com to make this move?
Right. I think we can point to three major shocks, three big increases in entropy for JD.com around that time. The first one was pretty public. The JD.com Yang Li marketing incident. That was October 2024.
I remember that causing a stir. How did that increase entropy for them in our terms?
Well, think about it. They hired Yang Li, a talk show comedian known for jokes that, let's say, poked fun at men. The whole ordinary yet confident line became famous.
Right.
And JD.com's user base, it's heavily male, almost 60%. People call it straight male e-commerce. So appointing her as a bargain ambassador for their big Double 11 sale, it backfired. Badly.
Okay, so alienation of their core users. That definitely creates disorder.
Exactly. There was immediate backlash on male-dominated forums, Hupu NGA, Zihu. Guys were organizing boycotts, canceling memberships, uninstalling the app, even pulling money out of JD Finance.
Wow, serious reaction. That's direct negative impact.
Absolutely. A clear increase in entropy, loss of engagement, potential revenue loss, brand damage.
How did JD try to manage that fallout?
They seemed kind of caught off guard. They pulled the promotional materials with her pretty quickly, issued an apology from the grand promotion marketing team.
Just the marketing team, not the company itself.
Yeah, and that was part of the problem. A lot of the male users felt the apology wasn't enough, wasn't sincere, because it came from this temporary team. So the attempt to reduce the entropy didn't really work. Might have even fueled it.
Did it stop there?
No, because then some female users got upset too. They felt JD was caving to male pressure and sacrificing female interests, so they started boycotting too.
Oh man, so they ended up caught in the middle of this gender opposition.
Completely. A really unstable, high-entropy situation for their brand.
And was there a measurable financial hit from all this?
Oh yes. Their stock price in Hong Kong took a nosedive. Dropped over 9% in one day at the peak. And over about 2 weeks, they lost something like HK $50 billion in market value.
50 billion Hong Kong dollars, that's huge.
It's a massive financial hit, a very tangible increase in business entropy. You can see how that would motivate them to find ways to stabilize and, well, change the narrative.
Okay, that's a compelling first point. What was the second major entropy increase you mentioned?
The second one was maybe less public, but potentially just as significant. It was their passive absence from a really high-level private economy mobilization meeting in February 2025.
A government meeting. Why was that absence such a big deal?
Well, this symposium was convened by top central leadership. It was widely seen as a major signal of government support for private companies, especially with all the global economic shifts happening. The message was basically, we support you, go out and contribute.
Okay, a signal of support.
Right, so being excluded from a meeting like that, especially when so many other tech and industry leaders were there, it could be interpreted as maybe JD.com's standing or influence wasn't as strong as it used to be. That creates uncertainty about future support, future policies. That's a rise in political entropy, if you will.
Who else was there? Just to give us a sense of who JD wasn't alongside.
A lot of big names. Ren Zhengfei from Huawei, Wang Quanfu from BYD, leaders from robotics, AI, and importantly, almost all the major internet giants. Ma Huateng from Tencent, Wang Xing from Meituan, even Jack Ma from Alibaba.
So basically, all their peers and major competitors were there, and JD wasn't.
Exactly, it was noticeable. And being overlooked like that, it's another potential shock, another entropy increase. Raises questions.
Especially considering, didn't you say their recent growth had been partly helped by government subsidies?
That's the context, yeah. Their Q4 2024 revenue growth, which was decent at 13.4% after a couple of slow years, was partly linked to government subsidies for things like home appliance trade-ins. So relying on that support on one hand and then missing this key meeting on the other, it adds to the picture of potential instability.
Right, makes sense. Okay, what was the third major entropy increase?
The third one hits closer to their core business, the slowdown in their main e-commerce growth, coupled with Meituan making aggressive moves into their territory.
Their growth was slowing.
Significantly. JD's net revenue growth rate went from nearly 28% in 2021 down to under 10% in 2022 and then just 3.7% in 2023. That's a major deceleration for their primary engine. Huge business entropy increase right there.
Why the slowdown? Just market saturation.
Partly, but also fierce competition. Pinduoduo was growing like crazy. Douyin e-commerce was becoming a major force.
Yeah.
They were eating into the market share.
Okay, external pressure.
Yes. And at the same time, Meituan was making this big strategic shift, moving beyond just food delivery.
The retail plus technology thing.
Exactly. Wang Xing laid out this vision, everything delivered home, using their massive network of over 5 million riders to deliver basically anything locally. Groceries, daily goods, you name it. They were targeting 400 billion yuan in revenue from this within 5 years.
Whoa. 400 billion. That's ambitious.
Hugely ambitious. And it was a direct threat to JD.com.
How specifically? Because JD is more about bigger items, planned purchases, right?
Traditionally, yes. JD built its strength on logistics for those kinds of goods, reliable, fast delivery. But Meituan was coming in saying, we can deliver all your local retail needs super fast. That potentially cuts into JD's market for everyday items, maybe even challenges their logistics advantage in urban areas. It directly attacks JD's core business model, increasing the entropy there.
Okay, I see. So you've got this perfect storm. A PR crisis damaging the brand, potential political headwinds, and serious pressure on the core e-commerce business from slowing growth and a major competitor encroaching.
Exactly. Those three factors combined created a significant amount of entropy, a lot of pressure and uncertainty for JD.com. You can see why they might feel the need to make a bold move, like entering food delivery, to try and counteract that.
Right, to inject new energy, find new growth, maybe even change the narrative. Okay, so given that context, let's look back again. You mentioned JD has some history, some past experiences that might inform how they're approaching this new fight.
Yes, definitely. I think there are three main sets of reference experiences we can look at that seem relevant to how they're trying to win back public favor and compete now.
What's the first one?
The first is really about the personal actions of the founder, Liu Shangdong. He has a history of making these, well, quite public gestures that tend to boost the company's image, acts that reduce entropy for the brand, you could say.
What kind of gestures?
Well, famously, he's put on a writer's uniform and personally delivered packages, creates that relatable man-of-the-people vibe.
I remember seeing pictures of that.
Then there was his big public promise back in 2018 saying, I will never fire any brother, referring to his employees. That fosters loyalty, projects social responsibility. And he regularly goes back to his hometown and gives out red envelopes to villagers, reinforces that connection to his roots. These things generally build goodwill.
Okay, so a pattern of founder-led image building. What's the second set of experiences?
The second is a specific competitive battle. The fight with Soning back in 2012, it was very public, very aggressive.
Soning, the electronics retailer, what happened there?
JD.com basically went on the attack, accusing Soning of making exorbitant profits. Liu Qingdong himself was all over Weibo, claiming Soning had like a 25% gross margin on appliances, while JD was doing 3 years of zero gross profit on the same stuff.
Wow, zero gross profit. That's a bold claim.
It was. The narrative was clear. JD is fighting for the consumer. Soning is exploiting you. They position themselves as the good guys.
How did they push that narrative beyond just talk?
They actually recruited 5,000 price intelligence officers, basically. Customers promising them money on the spot if they found a lower price at Suning. Turned consumers into monitors against their rival. And Liu Qingdong was relentless on Weibo, like over 50 posts, constantly building this counter-exploitation story, painting JD as the righteous choice. It was about winning public opinion as much as competing on price.
Okay, so using moral arguments in a commercial fight. Got it. What's the third reference point?
The third one is broader, looking at the whole Chinese internet industry and the recurring controversies around choose one out of two.
Ah, yes, the forced exclusivity thing. That's been a huge issue.
Huge. It really blew up with the Tencent 363Q war back in 2010, even led to government intervention, became a landmark anti-monopoly issue.
JD.com was involved in later disputes about this, weren't they?
Very much so. Starting around 2015, JD constantly accused Tmall, their big rival, of forcing merchants into these exclusive deals. Those accusations definitely played a role in the massive 18.2 billion yuan fine Alibaba eventually got hit with in 2021 for anti-monopoly violations.
Right. And Meituan got fined for similar things, too.
Yep, 3.4 billion yuan fine for practices against Ella.me. Even ByteDance accused Tencent of blocking Douyin links, a kind of subtle choose one out of two. It was a major battleground across the industry.
So this whole issue was really heating up and getting regulatory attention.
Absolutely. Things really shifted in late 2020 when the central government made anti-monopoly a clear priority. 2021 was basically year one of serious enforcement against internet platforms. Then the revised anti-monopoly law in 2022 specifically called out using data, algorithms, or capital to monopolize.
And has the situation changed since then?
It seems so. Since about 2024, we've seen this trend of platforms starting to tear down walls, like Taobao using WeChat Pay, JD Logistics working with Alibaba's Cainiao. Collaboration is happening. The idea of forcing choose one out of two is pretty much taboo publicly now.
Okay. So drawing on those three threads, founder actions, moral positioning in fights, and the whole choose one saga, how do JD's current tactics in the food delivery war seem to connect back?
You can see really clear echoes. First, to try and rebuild trust after those controversies we talked about, Liu Qiangdong is back out there, literally putting on the rider uniform again, delivering packages. It's that same playbook.
Connecting with the grassroots, showing he cares.
Exactly. And they are constantly talking about rider welfare, highlighting social security, base salaries, framing it as treating rider brothers well. That connects back to his never fire any brother vow.
What about the red envelopes?
That's evolved too. Now it's things like inviting writers to hot pot dinners, bonding sessions, still that focus on grassroots engagement, building loyalty from the ground up.
And how are they framing their whole reason for entering the market? Is it just business?
Not according to them. They're positioning it as creating value for the public, turning this business war into a fight for, social value, winning hearts and minds.
So the moral high ground again, like with Sudaming?
Seems like it. In their public statements, and reportedly in internal talks too, they're using moral arguments against Meituan, accusing them, implicitly or sometimes more directly, of monopoly, of choose one out of two, maybe cutting corners on quality.
While painting themselves
as the good guys. Generous for riders, fair to merchants, good for customers. Trying to leverage public sentiment, just like they did against Sinning.
And wasn't there that leaked comment about their profit margin target?
Yes. That leaked internal video where Liu Qiangdong apparently said JD's food delivery must not exceed a 5% net profit.
How does that compare to the industry norm?
Well, food delivery globally runs on razor-thin margins. A JP Morgan report put the average at like 2.2%. Meituan's is maybe around 2.8%. So aiming for a cap of 5%, while still profitable, signals they're perhaps prioritizing something other than just maximizing profit right away. It fits the narrative.
Okay, so putting it all together, what's the overall strategy here? What are they trying to achieve with these tactics?
It looks like a dual strategy, really. They're using these moral, socially focused tactics for two main goals. One, to actively repair their brand image and win back public favor after those damaging incidents. And two, to aggressively carve out market share in the food delivery space itself.
So merging reputation management with business competition.
Exactly. Trying to make their social standing a competitive advantage.
It's definitely a sophisticated approach, but, the obvious question comes up. How genuine is it? Is this really about social value? Or is that just smart marketing?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We can't know their true intentions. As the saying goes, judge by actions, not motives. So regardless of why JD is doing this, if their entry genuinely leads to better conditions for riders, better pay, benefits, or a better experience for customers, or maybe lower commissions for restaurants, then objectively, that does reduce system entropy. It creates real social value.
And as consumers, we'd probably welcome those outcomes, whatever the driving force.
That's likely, yes. Positive outcomes are positive outcomes.
You also mentioned this might be part of a bigger trend, though, beyond just JD versus Meituan.
Yeah, that's an important piece of context. Since around 2025, we've really seen this idea of social value become much more prominent in how major Chinese internet companies talk about their strategies. It's not just JD. You see ByteDance, Tencent, Alibaba. They're all making moves and statements that emphasize broader societal benefits, contributing to the public good.
So this could be more than just a competitive tactic, maybe a broader shift.
It's possible. It could signal a bigger restructuring in how these massive platforms operate and justify their role in society. Something definitely worth watching.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. We started asking why JD.com took this big leap into food delivery.
Right.
And using this anti-entropy growth idea, we looked at the pressures they were under, the brand damage from the Yang Li incident, the potential political signal from that meeting absence, and the very real slowdown in their core business while Meituan was expanding.
Exactly. Those were the entropy increases they needed to fight. And we saw how their past strategies, Lu Qingdong's personal image building, taking the moral high ground in fights like the one with Suning, and navigating those choose one out of two battles, seemed to be templates for their current tactics in food delivery.
The rider welfare focus, the value for the public framing, the subtle jabs at Meituan's practices.
It all fits a pattern of trying to regain goodwill and compete simultaneously.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on. Given this wider trend you mentioned, this increasing talk of social value across the whole Chinese internet sector, is what we're seeing between JD.com and Meituan, and maybe similar moves by others. Is this truly a sign of a new era? Are these platforms fundamentally shifting towards prioritizing broader societal benefits?
Or is social value just the latest buzzword? A new, more acceptable way to frame the same old game of competition, market share, and dominance.
A fundamental shift, or just new packaging for old ambitions? Something definitely worth thinking about as we watch how this all plays out. We genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this. Jump into the comments section and let us know what resonated. Which type of wealth are you focusing on?
Yeah, let us know.
And hey, if you found this discussion useful, maybe learned something new, definitely hit that subscribe button. We do these deep dives regularly, exploring valuable ideas.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.